Good morning, good evening, and good night, everybody. My name is Sarah, and yes, it is not Friday, but you guys are getting a video. I noticed that, it is summer, and even though I am taking summer classes, I have a lot of free time, so I figured why not do 2 videos a week, because I really enjoy making videos and editing videos. I want more things to talk about, so I'm gonna do it, so yeah. Now, because it is June, everything is queer, and so this month I decided to participate in the Queer Lit Readathon. This readathon was only a week long, so not too many books read, but I did want to talk about it, so with that all being said, let's dive on in. This kind of had a bingo board prompt thing, but you didn't have to do bingo, you didn't have to do blackout. It was like, do whatever you want. Yay, I think I made bingo. We will see. Prompt number 1, see yourself. This is a queer book that has representation that matches you in it. Now, I didn't actually pick anything that represented my sexuality. Instead, I picked dyslexia. And so I read part of the Hero of the Olympus series because I'm making my way through that series. And you know how much I love it. Specifically, I read House of Hades. This is a book that we find out Nico is, in fact, queer. I don't like how that situation played out. That is something I want to talk about in my wrap-up for later this month, because I am going to talk about this again later. These are just brief overviews. But yes, I read this. House of Hades focused around their journey to House of Hades. I can't really talk about this too much because this is series number 2, book 4. So there is a lot in here. I knew going into this that Nico was queer. The internet did in fact spoil it for me. I didn't realize the situation exactly we find out that information in. I don't like it, but I'm going to talk about this later. Okay, it was enjoyable, except that one situation. Again, dyslexia, majority of the demigods suffer either dyslexia, ADHD. There was some joke about one of the characters being lactose intolerant. I'm not, but I figured some sort of learning/reading disorder would be fairly appropriate for a readathon. The next prompt I chose to do was the rainbow color. And for this, I chose Alice Isn't Dead. This kind of has an orangey, red, yellow aesthetic. I found out recently I struggle to tell the difference between orange and red. That is new information for me. There is a difference. It just takes a second for me to see that. I talked about this last video in my lesbian representation. This is a sort of a urban horror fantasy. Follows our main character Keisha as she tries to find her wife Alice. And in the process, she becomes a truck driver, drives all around America, and she discovers the horrors of the American road. This kind of has, again, it's sort of fantasy, sort of supernatural. There's stuff there that clearly isn't from our world, but there's nothing directly placing it in, like, oh yeah, this is a fantasy book. It's by the same guy. He's by one of the same authors of Night Vale. It's sort of that it's weird, you just accept it mentality. Hey guys, Sarah here. So I actually forgot to mention a prompt that I read, and that was kind of this choose your own, and I picked lesbian representation, and again, I picked Alice Isn't Dead, so I've already talked about that book enough. I liked it, it was good. Yeah, just saying I forgot to mention that this also counted for that prompt. The next book I read was New Author. This is either a debut novel or a new to you author. I picked Red, White, and Royal Blue because, yeah, again, this is something I really want to talk about at the end of the month, but it was amazing and cute and adorable, but it also had one of those problems I had with House of Hades. I don't like the situation how the information got out to the world. So this follows the son of the first female president. He is half Mexican, half white. And he's like, oh, okay, I guess I'm in this situation now. And the story opens up with him hating the Prince of England. And essentially he goes to the prince's brother, also the prince's wedding, knocks over a giant cake while in an altercation with the prince. And this social media is like, oh wow, they hate each other. So the PR department's like, we gotta pretend you guys are best friends. And so then they realize the reason why they hate each other is because they actually like each other. And them being in such high political positions, that can't happen. So this has enemies to lovers, secret romance, politics and romance are things I actually really hate. And this book just does it so well, and I love it. The next prompt is disabled main character. Again, I picked Percy Jackson, dyslexia, mental illness and stuff, okay? The next 2 prompts I read were translated novels and graphic novels. I picked the manga No 6 or Number 6. I don't normally like to describe manga as a graphic novel. Normally that's reserved for a bind-up of comic books, but it technically is, so I'm skirting around that rule. No 6 is actually one of the few manga out there that have a gay relationship that isn't a yaoi manga, that isn't focused around their relationship. It is about 2 boys who, one of them grew up in this high society and the other one grew up in the dredges. And then one day, the boy from the high society is forced to flee from his home, and the dredge boy takes him in. A romance is slow build-up, and it is adorable. It isn't featured in the first volume, but you can tell that, there's a hint of chemistry there, and it is, I can't believe that there's actually a manga out there that has an openly gay relationship that isn't a gay story. Like those kind of relationships aren't that accepted in Japan, so the fact that it exists is a miracle, and I love it. Next prompt, person of color main character, and again I picked red, white, and royal blue because our main character again is half Latino, which is amazing because there's a whole thing going on in there where he's from Texas, his mom, the president, is white, she's the stallion, get up and stuff, and they're from a divorced family, and so his father from Mexico is also a politician, but the parents are divorced, and he's stuck there being this half Latino boy who's now the son of the president, and it's just, yeah, I told you, this book has a lot of great representation, and I just love it. I'm sorry if you guys can hear the doors slamming in the background. I live next to the entry to my building, and you can hear that door open and close all day. Next prompt, middle grade. Again, I picked Percy Jackson, still House of Hades. I'm using the same books for multiple prompts because I can get away with that. So, I don't actually know if the hero of the Olympus series counts as middle grade. It seems to be leering more into young adult, but I've always considered Rick Riordan's books to be middle grade, so in my mind it counts. Next prompt, historical fiction. Actually a different book, and that is A Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. This book I really read so I can get to its sequel, because the sequel's main character is asexual, and this one our main character is gay. This book was not what I thought it would be. From what I knew going into it is about this guy and his friend and his sister going on a trip to tour England before he has to take over his father's estate. That's the setup, that's not what happens. Things get derailed very quickly. There is some hints of like alchemy, and it's very real in this book and not what we kind of pushed off in our world. So it's like historical fiction, but it's like leaning into, I don't want to call it fantasy because alchemy isn't fantasy, but you guys know what I mean. The main character, I think he's actually bi because he talks about sleeping with a lot of women, but then he's with his best friend who is a half black, and it's just like, yeah, there is a definite romance ensuing between them. And again, his sister is asexual. I cannot wait to read her book because it is purple and I want it. Next prompt is science fiction and fantasy. Again, I picked No 6. This is a sci-fi kind of utopian / dystopian story. I've already talked about this. It's cute, it's adorable. I cannot wait to read the rest of the volumes. And the final prompt I read was book recommendations, a book that everyone has been recommending to you. And I picked Red, White, and Royal Blue. Ever since it came out, ever since the arc has come out, all my friends who had access to the arc would not shut up about it. And they were just so excited, and I couldn't wait for it to come out because I just heard so many good things. Alright, that has been my Queer Lit Readathon. Here is my bingo board, here's what I did. I think I was pretty successful for it only being a week long. But if you guys like this video and know any of these books I talk about, please leave that down in the comment section down below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And as always, good night, good evening, good morning everybody.